Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Plant 3D User Community Virtual Meetup for April. We've got some people trickling in here, but we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Jason Drew, and I'll be one of the hosts today. Co-presenter is Joel Harris, and we'll do kind of a quick intro here just shortly. So just kind of start out here, general information around the session here with GoToWebinar. Please keep your line muted. That's just to reduce background noise. If you have questions, you can use the questions box, raise your hand. This webinar is being recorded, and this will be recording and posting that on the customer success site after this is done today. All right, so my name is Jason Drew. So just a brief intro here. I'm a designated support specialist within Autodesk, and I provide technical support for our enterprise customers with some of the following products listed here. My background is mainly IT support in the past. I did work as a P&ID designer for a while at an oil and gas company in Tulsa, and then I've been with Autodesk here for right about 8 years now. Always kind of been in the product support role. And then I will turn it over to Joel here to do his intro.
Hi everybody, this is Joel Harris. I've been working with Jason now for a little over 6 years here at Autodesk. Before that I spent a couple decades as a piping designer, software developer, and administrator for an engineering company in the oil and gas industry.
All righty. So the agenda today, what we have for topics, we'll go over general Plant 3D news, and then the theme for this month is what's new in Plant 2021, an introduction to the new cloud collaboration that comes with 2021, and then an overview of the Autodesk Exchange site and where you can find some add-ins for Plant 3D. We'll look through and see if we have any questions from last month. I don't believe we had any. So we'll also go through some Q&A at the end. This session today is pretty long. We should go through the full hour. But if we have some time at the end, we'll definitely stay on and try to answer your questions. So just really quickly, I'm going to put a poll up here just to ask everyone if you've used Plant 3D before today, just to kind of give us an idea of how familiar people are with the platform. And then I'll show the results here in just a second. Give everyone a chance to vote for that. We're at 68%. And let's see. A few more, 74%. All right, so it looks like we've got a good mix here of people that have seen it and haven't seen it before. So I'll go ahead and close this out, and then I think I can share this, the results. So yeah, I've got, like I said, a good mix. There's some people that have used it, about 29% yes, and the rest have not seen it before. So it'll be good. We'll do an overview today, and you'll get to see the new system that we've got set up here, the new platform. So I'll go ahead and turn that off and go back to PowerPoint here. So the overview, or just sort of an overview of what these sessions are about, if you've never joined before, basically, we're going to be going through the objectives here. Like I said, to understand the new features of Plant 2021 that just came out recently. How does collaboration work with that cloud collaboration, and then going through Autodesk Exchange. So these are all intended to be, these sessions are intended to be casual engagements. There's a small portion for news and information from Autodesk that we share up front, and then we'll usually go through tips and tricks and workflows, and then we have discussions at the end. And as we go along, you can ask questions at any time. So I'm going to put the safe harbor statement up here. I'm not going to read all this. Autodesk is a publicly traded company, so we may be talking about future features and services, things like that in this session. So make sure that you don't base any purchasing or business decisions off of those. Always check with your account team first to make sure that something is actually released, because things are always subject to change within development cycles. So I'll just want to put that out there. And then going on to Plant 3D news. So we want to first cover off here, talking about the new release. Well, first and foremost, we're going to show this one last time. We've been talking about the Plant 3D Rogue beta, which was the 2021 beta. That's officially closed now that the product is available to download. So that if you've got that installed, that serial number won't work anymore. But now you can go out and just install the actual product, the release product there. And talking about the App Store, so we wanted to cover this off and just kind of explain to everybody, because a lot of people don't know that it exists, but it's a really useful place where you can find add-ons for not only Plant 3D but other Autodesk products out there. So the App Store is a site that is hosted by Autodesk. It allows you to go in and find plugins and extensions and all kinds of tools and utilities for applications. Basically, as far as the creation of the apps out there, it's going to be a mixture of third-party developers, maybe even independent developers, people in Autodesk Developer Network, and some of those out there are also from Autodesk ourselves, where we publish something out there. So we don't really guarantee third-party apps that are out there in the App Store. There are ways to go in. There's always going to be a support contact if you have an issue with an app from the App Store, that you can reach out to the publisher. Anything that's published by Autodesk, there should be a email there to someone at autodesk.com with the team that can help you if it's something that we've built out. So we wanted to just kind of include this here. There's a public FAQ that explains all this, and we'll kind of take a look at what you can find out there. So I actually didn't know about this, so I didn't realize it, but when you go into the newer products, you go up to the ribbon bar. Up at the top, there's a little button, a little shopping cart icon. That will take you right to the Autodesk App Store website. Or optionally, you can just go to apps.autodesk.com, and that will take you in there to the site. And so when you go in, this is what it's going to kind of look like. And let me just launch Chrome real quick here, and we can take a look. I go into my hyperlink here. So when you go in, you'll see that initially there's product stores out here. So this is organized by the different product type. If, for example, you wanted to find something for Plant 3D, you could just click on this filter. And then if you hover over that, you'll see some of the different categories. So let's say, for example, I was looking for a certain content pack or catalogs. You can click on this here. That'll filter it down. And then you can go in and look at what's available for those. So anything with the little blue icon, package icon here, those are content packs from Autodesk. Those are always free. We only really ship a minimal set of content out of the box, because these can get pretty large, but you can go out here and find additional content packs as you need them. When you click on these, basically what you'll have to do is you want to sign in, and then you can go ahead and download those. And it will keep track of what you've downloaded, so you can go back and find these again. And then over here on the side, you're going to find all the information about the actual app, the publisher, the support contact, things of that nature. And if there's a price, you'll see that as well. Some of these are trials, and then you can go in and see that there'll be a price after you download and go to the actual product. There'll be another download for the actual product itself, and they'll always have the price out there. But we just want to point this out. There's a lot of good stuff out here, and there's apps for really just about anything. There's a lot of good Navisworks stuff out here, utilities as far as just things to help you with the product itself and the functionality. I think one of the ones that we get pointed to a lot over here for Navisworks is like the Smart Plant view loader for people that want to bring in Smart Plant files into Navisworks. So I just want to kind of give you a brief overview of that and show you that that's available. We got a hyperlink down here to get to the App Store directly as well. So going into now that AutoCAD Plant 3D 2021 is released, we want to talk about some of the new features here. So the first thing that's come out is the PCF per drawing. So the old behavior in the past, you always had, you generated an ISO for one line number, you get one PCF file, and all the information for that line's in that PCF. In 2021, there is an option that you can turn on to enable PCF per drawing or per sheet. So essentially, if there's 3 ISO drawings generated, you'll get one PCF file for each one of those sheets. This is down inside the IsoConfig XML under the output section, and then there's an option that says enable PCF per drawing. By default, it's false because we didn't want to turn this on and cause any kind of interruptions, but if you wanted to set it to true, you can turn that on, and then it'll actually use that setting. And then Joel, I think you did a good job explaining this to me the other day. Maybe you can tell everyone kind of what this is generally used for.
Sure. Yeah. Just before I start, the PCF, you'll still get the line number PCF in the PCFs folder, but you'll also get individual PCFs for each sheet in the drawings folder. So you can see that screenshot there on the screen, as well as the split points XML. We find that with advanced work packaging, applications as well as fabrication applications. It's nice to have an ASCII PCF file um, that's associated with that particular uh, isometric drawing sheet, so that if you do have a PCF enabled AWP package that can read the materials for each PCF, then you actually have the ability to look at to track the materials as far as with advanced work packaging, as along with the DWGs that are being generated for each ISO sheet, as they may not be in the same installation work package or engineering work package even. So, but just this enables advanced work packaging for Plant 3D and its isometrics.
Okay. And I believe if you're doing something like stress analysis, you or spooling, you want to typically have one PCF for each one of those spools as well. So this
Yep.
kind of helps with that. Okay. And we got a link here. We did go over an overview of this on the YouTube video series for Plant 3D with the Experts. So we've got a hyperlink down there that'll take you to that if you want to kind of watch more in depth how all this is set up. And then going into visual display of insulation. So there's actually two things here. So now when you turn on the insulation display, you'll see kind of this green overlay over the pipe where the insulation is. Where before, it would just kind of look like the pipe is getting bigger or larger diameter. So it's kind of difficult to see that. And with the 2021 here, you'll see that in more of a transparent, easy to see type of view. You could kind of do this back in the older versions with turning on the X-ray display style, but it didn't really work for pipes. The pipes still showed up that way, and you could just kind of see elbows and fittings through there. But now it'll show up this way, just for a little bit cleaner look in the model there. And from what I've seen, it doesn't really change the output or what you would get imported into Navisworks per se. Navisworks is still going to see that insulation on its own layer if you have it set up that way. And then you can colorize it this way in Navisworks with using something like Appearance Profiler. So really no changes there on the actual physical things in the model, just a graphical change. On the ortho drawings, there is an option now to where you can change how the insulation is displayed. You can either have it to where there's no insulation at all. You can have it to where the pipelines are hidden behind any of the insulation where that's present, or you can set it to where it's kind of like transparent with the dotted, with the dashed lines, and you can see the pipelines behind the insulation. So those are an option you can turn on and off from the ribbon bar and the ortho drawing section. There's also an insulation annotation for that for the orthos as well. So I think you could kind of set that up before in the past, but now this is available out of the box where you can just right click, ortho annotate, and then select and put your actual insulation right there on the annotation there. And then going into, oh, sorry, there's a video link for this as well. That'll take you through this as kind of an overview on the YouTube series there. And then going into the changes for collaboration, this is the main portion of this session today. We want to talk about how this has changed. So in the past, it was on BIM 360 Teams. 2021 Plant 2021 release, now it's on BIM 360 Design, and the platform is Docs. So we'll talk about that, kind of show how this works. First thing, or first question might be, why would you want to use collaboration for Plant 3D? So if you have a distributed team, this is going to allow you to have multi-office collaboration across the internet, across the globe. There's really no file or database server requirements, so that's good for somebody, smaller teams, and maybe you don't have that kind of hardware in-house. It allows for file locking and versioning, similar to how Vault works. There's a check-in, check-out process, a little bit of document control there with versioning and things of that nature. We will get that by going to something like this collaboration here. The other thing we also see is performance increases because you're not really going across a wide area network or a VPN to get to the servers. You're just going up to the cloud. So you eliminate that latency there by working on a local, we call a local cache there, which is a SQLite project, and it just speeds things up a bit. There's really not anything major as far as workflow changes for an existing plant designer or someone that's using Plant 3D. It's just a matter of figuring out and getting used to checking in and checking out drawings and that operation. We'll see that a little bit further along in the presentation. So the other nice thing is that when you go to something like this, you can check out and modify the project settings while other people are working. So you noticed before, like with a SQL Server project, you have to kick everyone out of the project if you want to just go in and add a P&ID symbol or make some changes, and then everyone can go back in. With the way this is set up, you can check out, one project admin can check out those settings and work on them during the day, and then check those in and then synchronize that out to everybody else. So that's one nice thing about this as well. And then going into BIM 360 Docs now, where there's permission control available, whereas before on Teams, it was kind of all or nothing where you invited someone to the project, but they had access to everything. So now I have the ability to kind of go in and do some permission control and lock things down a little bit better. So how does this work? This is just kind of a high level overview, not too technical. So this is a non-collaboration project with, for example, SQL Server. We have a file server and a SQL database server running, and then you've got a main office, and you've got people in there working. Then you've got remote users from another office or another organization coming in through wide area network or VPN. So this is how it would operate just in a standard way without any kind of cloud collaboration. And then going into setting up one in the cloud, I mean, essentially everyone is remote users, but you might have a whole team of people in one office that are, users working on a project, and then someone else from another, like a subcontractor that's working elsewhere. Everyone's checking out drawings, making edits, checking them back in, and then everyone's refreshing from the cloud down to the local machine to get those changes. So works really smoothly for project teams. You can just keep everyone on the same project up there in the cloud, and there's really nothing on the SQL server in the cloud, so to speak, is transparent. There's really nothing to configure there. It's all set up as you configure a project, and no maintenance required on that. So looking at this from sort of the standpoint of what this would look like, on the left side, this is a BIM 360 Docs project. That's the platform where the files for the project are stored. The actual entitlement and the service is designed, but for the files themselves, they live inside BIM 360 Docs. And then on the right side, this is what you'd see on a local machine. This is like your local collaboration cache. This is where you're working. As you're working on a cloud project, this is where it's pulling it down and caching it. So this is like essentially a copy of the project, at least the folder structure and the actual configuration files and the databases. The databases are SQLite databases, so they're file based on your local machine. So that's where you get some of the performance gain by working on that local project. And then looking at the installation and configuration of just Plant 2021 in general, first thing you want to do is check your system requirements, make sure you meet at least the minimum, preferably the recommended requirements. You'll install Plant 2021. You'll check that you have BIM 360 design access, and then configure the project, set up your roles and folders, and then make sure everybody's up to speed on how to work in that environment. And let's see, we'll go through some of the versions overview. So looking at this from the versioning, so in the past, the previous cloud collaboration system we had was on BIM 360 Teams, so that would have been Plant 2018, 19, 2020, and that still required an entitlement of BIM 360 design. There's no reason why you can't keep using that. There's really I haven't seen any plans to say that we're decommissioning Teams or anything like that. That's still available to use on the older versions. You do need to have, like I said, the design entitlement to get a team hub spun up and set up. So that's one note we want to put in there. On the new version, starting with Plant 2021, everything's on the entitlement's been 360 design, and everything's stored on Docs. There hasn't been any changes, no migration required between 2018 up to 2021, no DWG file format changes from that version as well. So you could essentially open an older project like a 2018 project in 2021. It's not going to prompt you to migrate the project, and it's not going to ask you to migrate specs and catalogs either. There hasn't been any major changes with the actual format of those since 2018. I just want to pause real quick at a question in the Q&A box. Is there a recommended process for attaching a recap point cloud to a model in Plant 3D BIM 360 project? And Joel might be able to help me with that. I had a question about it the other day. I don't believe point clouds are fully supported with BIM 360. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's recap 360, but
Yeah, there's no full support for recap in the cloud, and so what people are doing, they're still working with distributing, like for work for home. They're working with external hard drives and getting those to their people. that is something that since we did the safe harbor statement, I can say that our development teams are looking at seriously. But right now, we don't have a solution for recap point clouds or any point clouds in BIM 360.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So moving on here to the system requirements for Plant. I'll just talk about that and also installing Plant 3D 2021. So if you go into, now this will be a little bit different based on whether or not you're an enterprise business agreement customer and you have like token flex or multi-flex setup. This would be for, or what you'd see for like a single user or multi-user account, where you go into your Autodesk account, go to products and services, and then if you go into the product itself, you'll see AutoCAD here. So it says specialized tool sets. So if you go down a little bit further, you'll find Plant 3D. You should see version 2021 now that it's released, and you can go into the View Downloads button, and that's going to give you an option to either install now. That's what most people use that. You'll also get some options here if you need to download it. So if you're creating a deployment, you'd want to download that, get the full installer. Otherwise, the install now usually is the easiest way to do it. It's a small executable, and then as you start that up, it's going to stream down or pull down the installation as it goes along and install it on your machine. I also want to check to make sure that you have BIM 360 design access. So there's a little bit of confusion around this where, we were talking about porting this over from Teams to Docs, which is technically where the files live, but design is the entitlement that gives you access to that. So that's the sort of the contract agreement. You'll see this in here if you go into your Autodesk account and you have a subscription to BIM 360 design. You'll see this here, and then you can click access now, and that'll take you actually into the website itself. So you got to make sure you got that set up and subscribed first. When you go in to assign somebody, like let's say you want to set up an individual Autodesk account or a user for this, either your contract administrator or your software coordinators can go in here and do this. You'll go down underneath the services here to BIM 360 Design, assign them BIM 360 Design, and then down here you'll see collaboration for Plant 3D. So you want to make sure that's turned on for the users that are going to use the cloud collaboration. As far as configuring the project, we'll go in here a little bit and look at that. So as far as the interface, this is probably pretty new to everybody, but this is what you're going to see when you go in and you have a BIM 360 entitlement set up. You've got for example, we've got just a test project in here already created. And then you'll go into the account admin from this little grid icon and go into here. And this is where you can start setting up roles. So you set up the roles from a top account level, and you want to go through here and create maybe some roles based on the standard type of designers and people you'd have in the project, like a Plant 3D editor, PNID editor, things like that, and get all those configured ahead of time. Now the nice thing is you only have to do this once because it's set by the account system or at that level within the hierarchy, so you don't have to do this over and over. You'll basically be able to assign these roles to people within projects. Let's see, we've got a question here in the chat window. Currently using collaboration with Fusion 360. You'll need to purchase a seat of BIM 360 design to move to this platform. Or is the entitlement included Plant 3D? I don't think you can use, because you can't really use a Fusion 360 hub to share a project. It has to be BIM 360 design and then a Docs project. So I think it's separate. From what I've seen so far. And as far as the licensing, the entitlement for design is not included necessarily with just Plant 3D. So if you subscribe to Plant 3D or AutoCAD, I should say, and you get the tool sets, you'd still have to get an entitlement for design. It's a separate contract type of thing. All right, so as far as configuring the project, so we talked about roles. As a project administrator, at that highest level, you can restrict member access to certain folders and limit access to people either within the roles you've configured or the companies that you've invited to collaborate with you, say like subcontractors and things like that. The folders are, we have to remember on the folders levels, basically it inherits the permission from the parent folder and goes down through the hierarchy. So with subfolders, you can change it on subfolders, but it has to be a greater level of access than what's at the folder above. So I think that's just a restriction of how the hierarchy works, but that's how you have to configure it down on the lower levels as far as the folders go. And then basically these roles are all going to be managed by BIM 360 account administrators. And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, you can have more than one account administrator because you can have people that help you, help the initial person set up.
Yeah, it's recommended that you have more than one account administrator as well as more than one project administrator, or at least have an overlap, and the account administrator can also add users to the project. So that way you've got redundancy if you
Mm.
happen to be, have somebody sick or out that day.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And this is what it kind of looks like once you get into, or this is just kind of example of a highly controlled system to where you have a role for, a P&ID editor and a Plant 3D editor, so that the P&ID editor has full rights to edit the drawings in that folder, but the Plant 3D editor can only view those, and then vice versa. The P&ID editor can only view the 3D models, but the editor can actually change those from someone like a pipe designer. And you also want to consider the other folders down there as well, like Isometrics, Orthos, Project Recycle Bin. That's probably something you'll have full access to everybody on. But basically, you want to kind of go through that and make sure you've got everything set up at the beginning, including spec sheets as well as you're setting up the project here. And there is a link at the bottom here for just general, BIM 360. Or an overview of BIM 360 permission control, which is good to go through that so you kind of get an understanding of how it works in general. So configuring a project, this is what we would do if we want to go in and set up the actual admin module here. So you go into your members, go to project admin. This is where you invite people to the project. So essentially you've got your project configured, you've got your roles, now you're ready to start bringing people in. You can copy and paste in email addresses here. You can select that, and then you can go ahead and assign a company, whether they're internal or somebody outside, and then assign a role to them. And you'll see over here, there's options here for your setting up the individual permissions for, like, this is docs, this is model coordination. So I'll be able to turn those on and off as you go. And really for plant, you're going to need docs at minimum there. And give me just a second here, look at some questions in the chat. One question here, what is the recommended process for making a copy of the AWS Consolidated Plant 3D Cloud Services database locally? So good question there. Essentially, when you're working on the project, and we were just kind of looking at this earlier, when you open that project, it's gonna cache down the database, like the latest version of the database, so that way you could run, say, a project report. So that it's kind of doing that automatically as you open the project. It's pulling down all that data. I don't know if there's a method to actually go out there through Forge or something like that, through the APIs to download it into a physical file or back it up in that way. There is a way to back up the entire project, and I suppose that's another method you could use if you wanted to pull everything down from the AWS services. But that's kind of what we ran into so far. You just have to kind of manually download or let it automatically download and cache it, and then you can start to work on the information locally. But we do get that question often, and I'm hoping that maybe in the future there'll be something like Forge where you could actually create some kind of add-in to get to the project databases and access it through there directly. So hopefully that answers the question there. If not, let me know and we'll dig into it a little bit more. So as far as what's going to happen, so after you invite someone to the project, you're going to get this email that goes out to them. This is what they're going to see in their inbox. You'll click go to your project. It'll ask them to sign in with their Autodesk user ID. If they don't have one already, they can create an account. And then once they sign in, it'll take them into the BIM 360 website. And that's kind of verifying that everything's set up as far as the 360 side of things, and make sure their account's working. And then now that you've got your project set up, kind of what's next here, essentially you want to make sure that your team is up to speed on how to use all this. We do have some resources on that. As far as BIM 360 in general, if you go to learnbim360.autodesk.com, there's training sessions on each of these individual modules that you can go through and learn about how this all works as far as the other features that are included with BIM 360. So that's one page to go to. As far as the learning more about just in general webinars, things like that, we've got the Customer Success Learning Hub, and I don't believe all of these are restricted to, like, even though this is Enterprise Hub, I think a lot of these are opened up for everybody. Just like this session here, the sign up page is open on the Customer Success Hub there. So go out there, it does ask you to sign in. There's going to be the previous webcasts that have been recorded. There's there's electrical meetup, there's a civil meetup, all the other ones are out there. And then you can also connect with industry peers and things like that in the forum. So good to check that out. And I will say there's also a what is it called, connected learning. So it's sort of like online learning where you can go in, and if you sign in, you can go through and track your progress, and it'll keep your spot. So if you go through some of the self-paced learning there. And then the virtual community sites, this is where we post everything from these sessions. We've got the previous events on the actual meetup store, resource store. This is where you'll get the registration pages, because we do run these sessions across 3 geos: Americas, European, Asia Pacific time zones, and you can share that out if you've got somebody in other regions that want to join. YouTube series here we've got right now going called Plant 3D with the Experts. There's some new ones that are posted recently around Plant 2021, and the new collaboration on Plant 3D kind of walks you through this step by step of going through and creating projects and things like that. So really good resource there if you want to go back and watch these videos and kind of get up to speed. And then as far as going into the project administrator workflow, so this would be what you'd want to do to get a project up there to the cloud like an existing project. So essentially to share a project is pretty simple. You'll go in, take an existing project that you've set up. Now this could be a SQL Server project, or it could be a SQLite project sitting on your local desktop, really doesn't matter. You can use either type to share up there to the cloud. So you'll open that project up, and then initially if you go into Plant and if you don't see the collaborate ribbon bar up there, you can just create a new drawing. That's going to bring this open to where you can start clicking on these, and then you can basically share the project. But once you open a project, you should have this button here. Go ahead and click that. It'll prompt you to come up to make sure you get signed in to your account there. You'll click Get Started, and then you'll basically browse to your project up there in the cloud, your BIM 360 Docs project, and then you'll want to go ahead and click Upload, and it's going to share that up to the cloud. So that's really all there is from that side. Now, kind of going back to the question around, how do you get a copy of the project, or how do you back this up? If you do the project backup from within Project Manager, then what it'll do is it'll download the entire project structure, all the files and folders, including the databases, and put that into a folder where you specify the path, and it's going to pull that down. So depending on the size of the project, it'll kind of give you an estimate here of the space it's going to take, and then a few minutes or longer, and then it'll download that. And what you'll get is this folder here with the entire project itself. So we were just looking at this earlier. There are ways to lock this down to where only certain people can run a backup of the project. Obviously, that was concern back with the Teams hosting, because anybody that had access to the project could back it up and essentially take the project and use it. Now with Docs, you can control that a bit more to where just an admin can do that. Yeah, just a word of caution here that if you try to go in and if you were to just go into BIM 360 Docs and download the folders individually, you could do that, but you won't get the databases with it. When you go through and you do an actual project backup from within Project Manager, you're going to get everything all at once. The project files and the databases synchronized. The latest version is going to be backed up there. So just kind of a word of caution that avoid trying to do it manually. This is the best way to go in and just do a backup. So as far as converting Teams project to Docs, so let's say you have an existing project you're already hosting out on BIM 360 Teams. The best way we've seen to do this is just go ahead and back up the current project that's on Teams. That's going to give you a local copy of that. You'll open up that project and then just share it up to Docs. So basically you would open it in Plant 2021. You'll see that option to share, and then you'll just pick the project that you want to upload that into. As far as editing project setup, so mentioned before, you'll check out the project settings. So this is what you would do as sort of an admin. You would check out and then check in those settings. Really, this is nice because you can edit the project settings while people are in the project. And what happens is once you check those settings in, within a few minutes, the other users will see a little icon in Project Manager saying that they need to go ahead and refresh, and they can get those settings pulled down to the local machine. Okay, so I got a question here on the project. So that's kind of what we're going through right now. This is how you would go through and change your project setup in BIM 360 Design. You'll check these out. Really, there's no difference within the user interface. You'll just go ahead and click apply. If you, let's say you're adding some P&ID symbols, but you're not really done. You can just go ahead and edit those. Click apply. It'll go ahead and check in the settings for you, but it'll keep this window open so you can keep working in project setup. So that's kind of nice. And then when you're done, you just click OK, and that'll close this out and push all the settings up there. Question here, let's see, for Jesse. Does project setup require all users to exit the project in order to edit them? Actually, it doesn't, not with the cloud collaboration, and it's very similar to the way Vault operated. You can check out the settings, everyone can keep working. Since everyone's on kind of like their local workspace, it's not interrupting them. So in this case, you wouldn't have to get everybody out of the project.
And just also to add to that, the changes that, let's say, the admin makes to the project setup get pushed back up to BIM 360 when they select OK on the screen that you're seeing here. And then it's available for others when they start to check drawings out from the project. So it's going to populate their local collaboration caches with that. And also the be able to do project setup, the person would have to have BIM 360 edit rights down to the project root folder in BIM 360 docs.
Oh, okay, yeah, because they're actually getting to those files, yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually a rights matrix which we're working on putting together and publishing that kind of explains the different roles and what kinds of BIM 360 permissions they have to have for that to be able to do these different tasks.
Yeah, something more plant specific. That way, it's a little bit more clear than the generic ones. Another question here: is it possible to direct the specs folder to suit various projects? I have had that question before, and the way that the collaboration projects work, similar to the way Vault projects work, it does have the specs have to remain underneath the project subfolders. That way, it can synchronize with the cloud. Otherwise, if a spec sheet folder was out on a network drive, it really wouldn't, someone else that opens it up elsewhere, they wouldn't get to those spec sheets. So we've had that question before, and that is a restriction in there. I believe it's to your spec sheets, and there's a couple other folders that you really can't change and move them outside the project hierarchy or structure there. So as far as user workflows, what's somebody going to see as far as a designer? The main difference is going to be, opening a project. That is different. You're going to, instead of opening it from like you normally would through SQL Server or off a file server, you're going to go into Open Collaboration Project, which is an option you'll see here with the little BIM 360 icon. You'll go in and select the account that you're in. You'll go in and select the actual, the BIM 360 project, and then you'll go down and select the plant project. It is possible to have multiple plant projects under one BIM 360 project, but we recommend you try to keep it one plant project per BIM 360 project, just for the sake of keeping things simple, especially when you have subcontractors in there and different companies. It's just kind of easier to maintain that way. So you'll select the project, click open. It's going to actually go in here and start pulling down. Initially, when you first open it, you'll have to wait for it to download the entire project structure and the files and things like that. And it's not downloading the actual drawings, it's just downloading it's just caching down the information there. And then as you open drawings individually, those will get downloaded. So depending on the size of the project, this could take a few minutes, to get this done. But once it's downloaded, it'll go ahead and open it up, and you'll see it like you would a normal project. And then going in here to the icon. So this will look different when you're in a collaboration project. You'll see the icon here letting you know that you're working on a cloud collaboration project. You'll see icons to indicate whether or not, if the file is not really available locally, if you haven't checked it out yet or haven't opened it read-only, it just has like a blank icon. If it's checked out to you and you can work on it, you'll see a check mark there by the actual drawing. If it's checked out to you and modified, meaning you've made some changes to it and you probably need to go ahead and check it in at some point, it'll show up in orange with the symbology here. And then if you've got a file that's been updated in the project, but you haven't refreshed it down yet, you'll see the little arrows indicating that you need to go ahead and do a refresh from project and get the latest one pulled down. And then if it's checked out by somebody else, it'll be grayed out. And I believe there's like a little padlock symbol. And you can also click on the file name and look down in the details below. It'll tell you who has that checked out in case you need to contact them to have them close it out or something like that. Status can't be established just means it hasn't updated yet, doesn't really know if there's any status on it. So you'll kind of see that initially as you open the project, but then as you click on these and start to open them, they'll refresh and they'll have one of these symbols here. There are some options that you can set. If you either go up to the ribbon bar or right click on a drawing, go to options. You can set how often it's going to check for updates from the cloud. So if you wanted to wait like up to an hour or so, you know, this will give a little balloon notification down in the bottom right corner whenever there's a change. Like let's say the project admin makes some changes to the project setup. This is how often it'll go out there and check for that. You can also have it prompt you before he applies updates, because if you're working on maybe a large project, you don't want to have to apply this automatically every 50 minutes and have the little, you know, progress bar go by. You can have it set to where you'll manually be doing the update yourself. You get the notification, but you can go in and then just manually refresh from project. And then as far as check-in and check-out, two options here. When you can either have it check it out automatically when you double click and open a drawing, or you can have it manually to where you open the drawing but you haven't really checked it out yet. That's sort of opening up read only first, and then you have to manually check it out. And then on check-in, usually this is good to set it to when the drawing is saved. That way every time you click the save button, it's going to automatically check it into the project, and that way the latest version is out there. But you can change that to where you have to manually check in your drawing. It could be a little bit dangerous if somebody walks away at the end of the day and they haven't really checked in their drawing. It may leave the latest version sitting on their machine. And then lastly, here at the bottom, there's some advanced settings for the path. You can change this from the standard user folder if you wanted to put this under. Maybe you have a standard folder off the C drive or D drive, maybe on a SSD drive that's faster. You can repath that there, and it will create a subfolder for each user if like two people are working on one workstation throughout the day. It's smart enough to know ahead, or to go ahead and set another folder for that. I just want to pause here for a question in the chat window. See what options are available to script and create a project backup overnight. So we did get that question with the Teams collaboration last year, and unfortunately, there's really no way to script this. There's not a command for the project backup. Unfortunately, you do have to right click on the project name and then go down and select project backup. So I don't know if you could actually do that through, there's something called, I think it's AutoIT. There's some script tools that might let you do that, to where if it'll launch Plant and you have the project open, it'll just right click and then download it. Might be kind of dangerous, but there may be a way to do that. But unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to do it until they have some kind of command that pops up, or a way to do it on the command line. I don't think there's any way to script it.
I'm just wondering if the command's available in the API to be able to do that.
That's a good point. I'm not sure.
Because if you could write your own API command to call that and then call your API from the script, it may be possible there.
Yeah, it's something that you could check through like the software development kit and see if it's in there. But yeah, we'll definitely check into that as like an enhancement request, and have maybe something on the command line that would just say, I want to run a backup, here's the path, and then just tell it to go. So this is what's going to kind of look like as far as the options that you have here when you're opening these up, or for check in and check out automatically or manually. And then moving on to editing pipe specs. So I mentioned before, the pipe specs are in the project themselves in a subfolder. I think that started with like 2018, I think it was. It's whenever we started getting spec-driven options for P&IDs. So in a collaboration project, basically, you'll want to make sure that you've got a local copy of the spec. But you can right-click on it and just say edit. It's going to automatically check that out to you, and then copy it down to your local machine, and then it's going to open spec editor, and then you can go in there and make your changes and save that. And when you come back out of spec editor back into Plant, you can right click and check that in, and then that's going to push that up to the project, and everyone's going to have the latest copy of the spec. And at that point, all the users can run a spec update and then get those changes, any spec modifications copied and synchronized with their drawings. So pretty simple there as far as editing and checking out, checking in spec sheets. General considerations for shared content. Now this is something we've been looking into recently because we get this question a lot. So the actual content folders for Plant are not by default shared to the cloud. For example, the Plant 3D catalogs, when we say content, that's what we're talking about. Shared content is the part catalogs. Those are still in the local C drive. We've been looking at ways to perhaps manually copy those or upload those to BIM 360 Docs and then use desktop connector. We've had some success with that. The main limitation with that we found is that you have to go back and like the individual users have to go in and download that catalog when there's changes. It doesn't automatically cache it down. In other words, if they were to go into Plant and open a spec and it goes, oh, there's, it doesn't really see that there's new catalog content to automatically pull that down. So that's something we're working on with the product teams, kind of putting those in as user stories to see if we can get something around that. So for now, I mean, the options for system administrators are putting that content out somewhere on. I mean, you could use something like OneDrive if you wanted to point it there to a folder that's common across the machines. You can adjust that path to the shared content, let it sync that way. Or if you do have a shared, an internal corporate map network drive or something like that. But that, this would include AutoCAD profiles, tool palettes, catalogs, P&ID tool palettes are another thing we're looking at as well. So all of those things are coming into play here. And then, in the chat window, Joel just linked over to an article that has been written up on that to kind of explain a possible way to do that.
Yeah, I sent that just to you because I'm a panelist, so I can't send it to everybody. So if you wanted to
down here.
share that with everybody, or if you wanted to show it on your screen, whatever, it's a work in progress. But there you go. There's the article down there.
Let me just grab this and I'll bring this up here so I can copy the link. I'll just get it from here. Yeah, this is definitely something that we're looking at, and hopefully we can get a solution that's just in the product itself. Yeah, so one of our enterprise support specialists in Germany wrote this up. So this talks about modifying the shared content folder, how you would change your local content, to point over to that, things like that. So it does take a little while to upload. I've done this myself, and there's so many files in the content folder. It may take a couple hours to get it all pushed up there to the cloud. But yeah, this is a good resource here of what we've been testing so far. All right, so moving on to kind of the tips and tricks, do's and don'ts. This is sort of the final portion here. One thing you want to make sure you try to do is manage all the files within Project Manager, within Plant 3D, because going through the software itself, it's going to synchronize the drawings and the database, changes things like that fairly well. I mean, that's what it's built for. You want to try to avoid doing that outside of Project Manager. You want to make sure you regularly check in your drawings, minimum daily. So at the end of the day, if you don't have that automatic option turned on, just make sure you save, close, and check in what you've got. Because if for some reason you're out the next day, somebody might say, oh, where's that drawing that's up to date, the latest drawing, and it may be sitting on someone's machine somewhere if it hasn't been checked in. Or the other danger there is if you have a hard drive failure and you haven't checked in that drawing, you may lose the local copy if it's not backed up. So there's just one thing to mention there. Open files read only if you just want to view a drawing. That way you're not locking somebody else out. If you just, by default, if you just double click on a drawing, it opens it up, checks out to you. So somebody else that may need to work on that drawing is stuck and they can't get to it and they have to call you and say, hey, can you get out of that drawing? If you always want to look at it, just right click and say open read only. It'll download it to your machine. You can view it. You're really not going to be making any changes to it. So just a trick there, a tip on that. Attaching XREFs from within, the actual structure of Plant 3D, use the plant attach command. And so you'll see this icon up here on the ribbon bar. That's the plant attach command, which is meaning you're going to attach a drawing from within the project into another project drawing itself. Or you can right click on a drawing name and then say attach into this drawing. So that came out with, I believe it was 2019, had that option to where you can do that now. I don't know if I have this open, but yeah, so for example, you can just right click here and say XREF into current drawing, or you would go up here and basically do attach this way. So that runs the plant attach command. And I don't remember, Joel, if you actually avoid using just the regular XREF command, is there danger in that if you were to type in XREF and then browse all the way to your collaboration cache? I don't know if that's supported or not, or if it knows that it's doing the same thing here.
Well, it'll look there, but it's not going to download it to your local workspace. so it doesn't get updated is what
I see.
happens. So
Okay.
you're best off with when you do an AutoCAD XREF command, it should definitely be something which is not in BIM 360 and should be something that, like I was mentioning this to one of the people that asked the question about the point cloud, is that you could have the point cloud on a local drive and XREF it in or attach the point cloud from that local drive, but it's recommended that you at least unload it before you save it back up to BIM 360 so that you're not having errors when it opens up again for somebody else.
Yeah, the other thing we're looking at, obviously you're going to have other design disciplines, and perhaps you've got somebody that's uploaded some advanced steel drawings or civil drawings to docs, and so you can go and like just do the regular xref command and browse to that folder cache and xref that in. But the problem with that is, or at least what we found, is that Plant 3D doesn't tell Desktop Connector to automatically go grab that drawing or get the latest version of it down from the cloud. So that's something we've reported to the team, see if they can go in and make some changes to that, because regular AutoCAD does that and Civil 3 does that now, or Civil 3D does that with its new cloud integration, sorry. But Plant doesn't seem to do that. So that's something we're looking at. But for now, if you have the drawings within, within the project themselves, then this XRF attach or Plant attach works pretty well.
Or you can
Uh,
manually update the local version of that on your collaboration, I mean in your workspace locally, and then it will load up, but it's a manual process.
yeah, yeah. So really recommend using the BIM 360 web interface, the website itself, just to view and comment on files only. There are some options in there with docs where you can do some markups, things like that. And I believe those are okay. You just want to make sure that you don't modify any of the actual physical files. Don't try to, well, we'll cover that in the don't section here. In doubt, ask an administrator or a subject matter expert on your team before you do anything that might seem like it might cause an issue, and they can let you know if it's okay or not. And then on the don'ts, so don't try to use the BIM 360 website to manage project files or folders, because what happens is the project doesn't really know about those changes. So if I go in and take a drawing, even though it's the same file name, and I override it and say it's a new version within the docs website, the project still looking for the old one there, and things can get out of sync. So be careful with that. Make sure that you don't use the file explorers to change the locally stored files. In other words, don't go into the collaboration cache and overwrite files. There's some cases where you can get away with that, like it'll prompt you when you open the drawing, says, do you want to merge this into the project, and that's okay, and then you can check it in. But just in general, it's better to just do everything through Plant 3D Project Manager. That way it can run checks on it as it comes in and out and do it properly. Yeah, go ahead, Joel. Do you have something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to add to that. A lot of us, even admins, have bad habits editing, XML files on isometric styles and stuff like that. And really, you want to try to get as much of that done up front in your template project before you share it to BIM 360. Otherwise, you're kind of walking that fine line between manually editing files in the collaboration cache or hoping that you can get at the change you need to make through the UI. So just be conscious of try to get as much done up front as you can, so to avoid manually editing files in the collaboration cache. Just to reemphasize what you said, Jason.
Yeah, and I think the only exception to that would be if you needed to edit the ISO config XML. As a project admin, you would check out the project settings, edit that file in Notepad or Notepad XML, and then save it, and then check in your project settings, and it'll push that up there. So that would be one exception to the rule, I guess,
Yeah,
where you have to
yeah.
do that. So try to avoid working in offline mode if possible. Like for example, if you lose your internet connection, you can keep working on the project. You've got your local cache, you've got the drawings you've checked out. You can edit those, as long as you need to until the connection and your services come back up. But try to avoid that in general. Try to be always connected if you can, and that way you've got the latest versions of everything. And then try not to XREF files are not part of the same Plant 3D collaboration project. That's where things can get kind of tricky if you're trying to go through Desktop Connector and attach a drawing from another project somewhere else. So just a word of caution there on that. And this is more just essentially the text of the graphical slides we just went through. So we put these in here just for reference. I'll skip over these two. And then one thing we want to mention here lastly is the health dashboard. So this is going to help you stay up to date on if any maintenance is going on, like if the services need to go down for a while for changes and updates, this is where you want to go. So if you go to health.autodesk.com, you can sign in there. You can subscribe to the services you're interested in watching. Like for example, there's going to be a plant collaboration services down here at the bottom. Maybe you want to keep an eye on like the docs as well, since that's hosting the file storage. And then the older BIM 360 teams would be the Fusion/Team hubs here. So you may want to sign up for that depending on what you're using there. And that'll send you an email if something's degraded or if there's a maintenance window coming up, it's going to let you know ahead of time and you'll get that in your inbox. I do want to run one last poll here. So I'll go ahead and bring this up. Just want to ask if anybody's planning to use this anytime in sometime in the next 6 months. So I'll let everyone vote on that, and then we'll show the results here. All right, so we're at 50%, and give a little bit more time for everyone to vote. And we're at 77. All right, 81. And just give it another 10 seconds here. We're up to 85, so now I'll go ahead and close this out and show the results. All right, so let me close that and share. So we got a little bit more than half there looking to use it. So we've had, like I said, we've had a lot of interest in this lately with everyone working from home, and I think so far everything's been pretty smooth with customers rolling it out and inviting teams to it. Seems pretty simple to get it done. So does anybody have any other questions? We've got about 4 minutes here before the top of the hour, and be glad to answer anything you might have. If you want to ask a question live, raise your hand. I've got the participant list over here, and I can unmute you if you want to ask a question live. All right, don't see anything in the chat. No hands raised. So give a few more minutes here, and just want to kind of point out so you're going to get a survey. So I want to say first, thank you for joining today. It's a very long topic, very detailed topic. You'll get a survey after this session, so please fill that out and give us some feedback. Look forward to having you on future sessions. And yeah, I do have one question here. I'll just back up a little bit here. Let's see, a couple. Any plans to have guests from the App Store to present? That's a good question. We've thought about bringing in somebody from maybe another geo to present on some of their applications out there. So we may be able to do that in the future. That's a good idea. We'll put it on the list for sure. Does BIM 360 improve with collaboration for Revit? Let's see. Not sure if I understand that question. So there is a cloud work sharing with Revit on BIM 360 design, so that is possible. That would be something you could use there.
Yeah, I think the collaboration for Revit officially is the BIM 360 Teams platform. And if you go to BIM 360 Design, it's called Revit Cloud Work Sharing. That's the engine that works with Revit at that point. And you have a lot more capability in Revit to be able to actually publish models and sheet sets, and people could consume them in different work groups and stuff. So BIM 360 Design with Revit is way farther enhanced and sophisticated than it was in BIM 360 Team. And also you do have the granular folder rights as well as cloud model work sharing. So
okay. So looks like Ramon has his hand up. Do you want let's see, or maybe go ahead and post your name in the chat there, Rowan, if you want to speak, and I can unmute you if you still got a question. Be glad to have you ask that live. I'm just going to go through the list here, the Q&A, because there's a couple more here. Is there does BIM 360 Desktop Connector have a batch or accessible via DOS batch to script moving, downloading, uploading files to BIM 360? I've never really tried that. I think it probably would adhere to normal file operations, like you can drag and drop files into desktop connector drive, the BIM 360 drive there through Windows Explorer, I would assume if you copy them in through DOS command prompt, it might just see those and sync up. So sort of the way OneDrive does. But I'm not 100% sure on that without testing it. Um, let's see, what is the recommended process for copying BIM 360 project or making template project users, team, folder rights? I would say for projects, you could take an existing project and make a backup of it, and then you could use that as a template. You could have maybe a master project that you keep on your local machine and use that to share up to the cloud when you want to start a new project. You can still do that, because when you share a project to the cloud, it doesn't do anything to the local copy. It just copies it up there, keeps the original there. So that's kind of a general best practice on just using templates. It's not very different than what you do with SQL Server projects right now. Is there a list of top 10 apps? Not sure if those are actually ranked, or if there's any kind of way to show that in there in the filtering. There might be a way to filter by the number of stars or the ranking that it has in there, but I'm not sure myself on that one. Let's see, I'd like to know about the interoperability, how it talked to other programs to BIM 360 design. Let's see, that's from Lucas. Is that something you'd like to, see you got your hand up there. Is that something you'd like to ask live? I can unmute you there if you'd like. I think in general, there is interoperability with BIM 360 design and docs and things of that nature, and all of that's kind of coming out here as plants getting on that platform. So I think there'll be more around that in the BIM 360 platform in general. I don't know if Joel, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the fact that your XREF models, let's say of advanced steel, would have to live inside of the Plant 3D project file structure, and also be part of the Plant 3D project, so that the database knows to pull it down to your local collaboration space. I think that's the restrictions we're currently working with. So integration is going to be kind of folder restricted, I think, but hoping to see more around that.
Yeah, we see that, like the question here about the managing XREF or Revit files, Plant 3 XREFs, that all gets into using Desktop Connector and exporting DWGs out of Revit, uh, and then bringing those into actually uploading those into docs, and then XREFing those back into Plant. So it gets a little bit tricky, but we're kind of reviewing those workflows and see if we can create sessions like this around it. And just kind of give some information that help everybody use that common platform. That's what we're kind of going for, as a common data platform. Let's see, another question here from Lance. Any improvements to ortho generation speed with collaboration? I don't believe there would be any changes. I mean, there's not any general improvements I see with 2021, so it would still be the same operation, the same process, and I don't think the collaboration really changes that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be running, when you generate an isometric or you generate an ortho, you're still doing it on the desktop in your local collaboration space. So it's possible that it'd be faster compared to a SQL project that was referencing drawings that were on your network, let's say. If you had an ortho that had several Plant 3D models in it that were coming off the network, it may take more time accessing those files. But when you're working in a collaboration space with local collaboration cache, is all going to be off your local drive, but you still are processing that ortho or ISOs on your local desktop application. So
yeah, that's the main amount of time. The hidden line removal and all that stuff running on the local is your CPU and RAM and stuff like that. So a couple more questions here towards the end. Do I still have to export Revit files out to DWG? The answer is yes. So if you wanted to get Revit models out of Revit and into Planet, would be a DWG export out of Revit. We are seeing customers starting to use the collaboration models, where basically you would take all of your Plant 3D drawings into Navisworks and create like a common NWD file, and then you could attach that into Revit. That works pretty well. It adheres to the view boundaries in Revit. And we've seen some people using that recently. Last question here is, what information is out there for BIM 360 interactivity with Plant 3D and Navisworks? So I think there might be some information around the new, issue tracking, where you can actually flag an issue in BIM 360 and then synchronize and see that on the Navisworks desktop. That's the main integration I've seen so far. And I don't know if that's in an article or maybe a video. we could dig that up.
Exactly. Yeah, you could do that in BIM 360 docs, where you can view and assign issues there inside of the viewer, because that's one nice thing about this too that collaboration brings is all your plant models live in the cloud, and the Chrome-based web browser can go in there and you can view these models too. So if you have workflows right now where you're generating NWDs overnight for your engineers who have Navisworks Freedom on their machines, and then they can look at the model, you're actually replacing that now with a browser that can go to the cloud and look at your Plant 3D aggregate model up there. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of benefits from being on that platform that we really haven't touched on in this session, but those are the ones that we'd want you to kind of to think about because there's still those. Navisworks interoperability is a good one. I'm glad that that was brought up.
Yeah, the one question from Lance, are plans to integrate Plant 3D model data into Navisworks without having to use data tools? I would recommend looking on the App Store. There's a couple of utilities out there that allow you to pull in all of the Plant 3D project data into Navisworks, so it actually reads from the database files in there. So that's an option. I don't know if there's any plans to actually make it part of data tools. I think some people have maybe connected to the databases. You remember something like that, Joel, or a method for that, or if that works?
Actually, I no, I haven't, but I know that you can. Um, with data tools, you always have the SQLite. There are SQLite ODBC drivers out there as well as SQL ODBC drivers that I've seen used by people to actually really enhance the Navisworks data that's there. I'm not too sure what's available in Forge to be able to access that data in the cloud, but that would be an interesting thing to see. Wish I had more time to play with stuff like that.
Yeah, there's definitely one out there that I remember looking at, and it was really slick. You could just go in and select the project, and then it knows the drawings you're pulling in, and it reads from the database. And I think you can get even your custom properties to come through. Some of the stuff that the object enablers won't read. So I recommend going back out to the App Store there and taking a look through the Navisworks tools, maybe under the plant section, but I think it's under Navisworks. So recommend taking a look there. And yeah, so I think that's it on questions. I know we're over time, so thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for joining today. We'll go ahead and close out and look forward to talking to you in the next session.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep. Thank you. Talk
Yeah,
to you
I,
later. Hmm?
I sent an email, or used.
Oh,
I
then
sent an
let me just
email to
close this out
Ilya,
here. Oh, okay. Okay.
because
Maybe that one.
I can't see the questions in the Q&A session.
Oh, okay.